So good morning, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining us for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. Today, we're doing a bit of all three. I'll introduce our speakers in just a minute, but I wanted to go through our 6 classes currently joining us from across North America, give them a chance to do a bit of a shout out. So we've got Mr. Rester's grade 5s in Stewartville, Minnesota. Hi, guys. Oh, they're coming in. They're not there yet, but they will be. We've got Mrs. Drosny's grade 5s in Bristol, Connecticut. We've got Mr. Butler and Matthias's grade 4-5s in Champaign, Illinois.
Everybody say hello.
Hello. We've got Miss Brady's grade 6s in Festus, Missouri. Hi, guys. Hello. And two more. We've got Mr. Atkinson's grade 10s in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Hi. Hey, so much lower pitch, I love it. And then we've got Miss Woods' grade 5-6s in Toronto, Ontario. Representing Canada very, very well. All right. Of course, the reason you guys are all here today is for our speaker. So we are joined live on the research vessel Atlantis by the team at the Woods Hole Ocean Institute, who are on an expedition that launched just 2 days ago off Mexico. So they're going to take us through the ship and show us how they're going to do some amazing science on their vessel and amazing science on their expedition with some of the coolest machines and robots in the entire world. Without further ado, thank you so much for joining us, Ken, and take it away.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. Like Jesse said, my name is Ken Costell. I'm with the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, and right now we're on the research vessel Atlantis. This is the computer lab. You're going to meet these folks in a second. We're in the Eastern Pacific right now. We're carrying the robotic underwater vehicle Sentry and the human-occupied submersible Alvin. We're headed south from Manzanillo, Mexico. We've been heading south now for about 2 days. We're about 1,000 miles south of Manzanillo, 2,000 miles south of San Diego. And we'll be at our first dive site tonight at 8 p.m. We're here to study the seafloor, how the planet is formed by volcanic activity underwater, how that crust changes over millions of years, and what it means to some of the animals and the microbes who live on the seafloor here and and around the world. So with me to help explain all of this today is Matt Smith. He's a geologist at the University of Florida. He's been studying the seafloor for 30 years. And Elizabeth Reichert, microbiologist, also at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. She's a biologist. She has a degree in geology, and that's not so crazy. She's going to explain why that's important. So I'm going to make sure the camera's on them, and I'm going to ask Matt first. The first question to you: why do we care so much about the seafloor? And I'll get close to you so you don't have to shout so much. But
well, 2/3 of our planet's covered by the seafloor, and things that happen on the seafloor, the Earth is kind of a big interconnected system, and stuff that happens on the seafloor affects all kinds of different things on Earth, and so I became fascinated by that, and so we really still have an awful lot to learn about that, and so that's what we're out here trying to do, really.
So Elizabeth, I alluded to this a second ago. Why is it not so crazy that a biologist would have a geology degree, and what do you help bring to this picture here?
So I think I'm just sort of fascinated by the natural world in general, and so I started actually looking to get a degree in marine geophysics because I used to work for NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and in the division that makes nautical charts and maps, and that's why I first learned about the seafloor and the opportunities to go to sea and take your whole laboratory and your shower, your laundry, and your kitchen with you when you do field work, and so that's where it all started. I transitioned into microbiology later.
We're going to come back in a second about what you did. So Matt, what's the first step?
Long string on the floor, and there are on the ocean floor, and we've been studying for understanding there and the magma from and how that impacts the whole ocean. But this particular one, quite a bit different than other ones that we've studied, and so provides us some kind of idea of how these things form by looking at something that's different and see what this idea, really gives us an opportunity.
Oh, Ken, you're cutting out a little bit. Sorry. I don't know if it's moving the camera around or what, but let's get a little more stable and hopefully get you guys back. You're cutting out a little bit, so I don't know if the camera's moving or what's going on. Sorry about that.
A little more stable. How's that?
That's better, actually. I can hear you well. And the classes, if you guys have a chance to like type in if you guys can hear everything good too, that would be great. Actually, let's just check really quick. Miss Woods' class, can you guys hear them all good? There's like thumbs up and no's at the same time. Okay, let's try again from there, because when we started at the beginning, we were fine. And so let's see. Keep going. Sorry.
So now you guys have been here before. What did you do when you were here in 2016? What's special about where we're going?
Well, when we were here in 2016, we spent time really trying to investigate the volcanoes and trying to understand how recently they've been active. But it's a very long chain of volcanoes compared to a lot of ones on the ocean floor, particularly those that are near mid-ocean ridges, which is kind of the environment we're at right now. So we had a chance to do some initial surveying and come up with some ideas based upon the information that we got. And now we want to go out and try to refine those ideas and test some of the hypotheses that we developed from our first time. There was an awful lot of volcanoes to study, so we initially were trying to cover as much ground as possible. And now we're kind of trying to focus in a little bit more on a few individual volcanoes to try to test some of these early hypotheses that we formed from the initial data that we got here 2 years ago.
And maybe you guys in the classrooms didn't know this, but something like 70% of the volcanic activity on the planet occurs underwater. So, most of the really active geological places on Earth are hidden from view, and we have to spend this kind of effort to go look at it and study that in order to better understand how our planet is built and how it changes over long periods of time. And in addition to that volcanic activity influences things that live down on the seafloor. And where Elizabeth comes in, she's interested in how the connection between geology and biology works. So what do you guys expect to see down there? Some of the we're at.
They kind of think of it as the volcano maybe producing the like C vitamin for all of the life in the seafloor. So it's where a lot of the trace nutrients and metals that can actually turn into a lot of what we see the surface of the earth that uses sunlight and uses oxygen. But then on the seafloor, we don't necessarily have those oxygens, and so there's really cool organisms that actually breathe iron or different metals, and that's how they make a living. So there's these really fascinating adaptations world away from sun and using all of the different chemicals that are coming to Earth to energy instead. And a lot of them look really fascinating in addition to having these really interesting metabolisms or ways of different sources they can eat and make a living from.
Yeah, maybe some of you guys have seen tubeworms, pictures of tubeworms. They're these really red, sort of feathery heads that stick out of a white tube that put down on the seafloor. Those things are living thanks to the microbes inside of them that are able to eat the chemicals in the water and then provide the tubeworm with sugars and the things that they need to live.
Similar to how we maybe eat spinach that uses sunlight and produces carbon that we can then eat and get energy from. They have microbes that make the carbon that they can then eat and get energy from. And so the systems aren't necessarily that different in how they function, but they look much different than we do.
Yeah. And that has an impact then on what we think might live beyond Earth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's a lot of places that are sort of hotspots for exploration outside of Earth, such as different moons of other planets that maybe have sort of similar vent systems and similar sort of chemicals that are coming out of the crust. And so maybe if we're able to study how it works on Earth, then that might help us determine where the best spots might be to look for life outside of Earth as well.
So we have to use all this effort to go really deep to study things that might exist way outside of Earth. And one of the things we do that with is Alvin, which you can see on Matt's t-shirt right there. And you're going to see that in a second. And Matt, you've been down in Alvin before. What's it like?
It's really an amazing experience. It's really, in some ways, it's almost like being an astronaut, but for inner space, but for our oceans. But it's really an amazing experience, and there are some things that we have a number of different tools that we can use to go explore the bottom of the ocean. But there's really no substitute for the human eye and the human brain, and so getting a chance to go down and actually see that in person gives you perspectives that are really hard to get from other kinds of instruments that do take wonderful imagery, but it still isn't the same as seeing it for yourself. And
yeah.
Sorry, guys. I'm just going to say, if you could come a little closer, some of the classes are typing in that when you talk, we can hear you, but for the speakers, it's really hard to actually catch what they're saying, and they're saying such great stuff. So just come a little closer to the camera. Sorry about that, guys.
Okay, we're getting closer. Okay, sorry. Say it again. What's it like to be down in Alvin? It's got to be spectacular.
Yeah, I mean, it's really an exciting experience, and when you're sinking down through the dark depths, when you first catch sight of the seafloor, you almost feel like you're landing on another planet or something like that. It's this incredible volcanic landscape, and being able to use that human-occupied vehicle really just gives us a lot of other capabilities than you might get with, say, a robotic vehicle. The human eye and the human brain have the ability to kind of see things in ways that really, no matter how good the video system are, there are elements of that that are hard to catch remote systems. And so, while those are important to be able to go down in person with the whole kind of act to see real in a way that with some of the robotics, which once again are incredibly valuable tools, and it's about having a bunch of different tools in your toolkit to be able to as much as possible.
We hear that from a lot of scientists. The first time they study pictures of the seafloor or from the second underwater, the video feed live from the seafloor, but as soon as you go down in Alvin and you see it with your own eye, people with your own eye have that contact. It's completely different. It's a career-changing gift, which Elizabeth is going to experience. You're going down on your first dive, right?
Yep.
And sometime next week?
Yes.
And for that, how excited are you?
I'm very excited. I've been looking forward to. We're trying to make happen for maybe 10 years or something like that. And so to finally get the opportunity to have some experience is awesome. And to be able to get a bunch of other scientists that are also doing it for the still learning, how to put together our dive plans and how to integrate all the different science needs at the same time. And so it's a learning experience on the ship and as well as having first opportunity in Alvin.
We obviously can talk about this hours, but we want to hear from you guys. So why don't we switch over to questions from the schools?
Actually, just sorry guys to say this, but just because the connection's really choppy there, when you guys go back to the other side, if there's a way to plug it in the cable and show us Alvin a little bit there, that would be great. Just because we're getting consistent messages from the classes about how difficult it is to hear and get things across. Sorry to do that to you. But while you're heading back, I can sort of reiterate some of the things that I caught from what you guys are talking about and a little bit of the history of Alvin. And then, is that okay? Can we go with that?
We're not plugged in. We're on wireless right now, and the ship's wireless.
Yeah. Were you set to go to the other end of the ship though to show us more? Or not?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but do you want?
I think that would be best just because it's like we hear every second or third word right now, which makes it difficult for Q&A.
Okay.
Sorry, guys.
Unless they want to type in questions, or do you want to just go
we
mobile?
can do that, actually. So if classes want to type in questions, or we can try and, you know what, I'll take them from some of the classes. We'll see how it goes, and we'll go from there. So Mr. Rester's class, we can...
Go ahead.
So yeah, I've got you guys demuted. If you have a question about Alvin, the ship, the research expedition, what they're doing, that would be great.
It was really hard to hear, so the questions are, go ahead. How do they navigate across the Atlantic? How do you locate the volcanoes?
Yeah, perfect. So if you guys caught that, so Ken, you're going to have to answer, or at least come really close to the camera, guys. How do you navigate and how do you find the volcanoes to begin with?
How do you navigate down there, and how do you find the volcanoes? Because yeah, this is what we see. It's just ocean. There's no volcanoes out there. They're down below. Go ahead.
So how do we find the volcanoes? Well, one of the first things that we have to do when we come out here is to try to make a map of the ocean floor so we can see the features on the ocean floor. And the ship has a system called multi-beam that allows us to do that. You can actually see some of the maps that we're creating real time right now. And this doesn't work all that much different than, say, you might have like a depth sounder or a fish finder on a fishing boat, if you've ever been fishing. But it works a little bit different in that it sends lots and lots of pulses of sound down. So a depth finder will send a little pulse of sound down and back and use the time it takes to figure out the depth. What we're doing is we're sending down kind of a fan shape of many, many pulses at once so we can map the ocean over kind of an area. And then once we have those maps, we'll look for features on the ocean floor that look like they could be volcanic features. And that's how we kind of find where to go.
Very cool.
You guys.
Yeah, so actually, let's check. Mr. Rester, did you guys catch all that?
We did, thank you.
Excellent. Okay, good. So it is just coming close to the camera, guys. That's perfect. And speaking as loudly as possible. Mrs. Drozny's class, if you guys have a question.
It's been quite difficult to hear. So if you don't have a question right at this time, it's just been a little choppy.
I know. Sorry about that, guys. Bringing them from the middle of the Pacific Ocean makes it difficult sometimes. Let's go to Champaign, Illinois. If you guys, any questions?
Sana, why don't you go up to the computers so they can hear you?
I have a question. Sure. Jeff, I have a question.
So the only person that should hear it is well, I have to take a moment. Sana, you got it?
Okay, yeah. Wait, is it on me?
Yes.
Yep, we're good.
Oh, okay. So, we already did find out some about Alvin, though. Do you guys look for other things other than just volcanoes?
Oh yeah.
You want to take that?
Yeah, so I focus on the life that that you can't see with your eyes, that lives within the water and the rocks on the seafloor. And then the ways, so what I'm usually looking for is if you ever look on like a hot summer day and you see like out on the road, there's some shimmering kind of heat waves coming off. I look for almost the exact same thing, but on the seafloor. So I know that there's warm water coming out, and that could be a for the tiny forms that I'm looking for in the water. So I go simmer and collect the water sample, bring it back on deck, and then try and figure out who's in there, what they're doing, how fast they do things. And that's sort of my main research. And then we have a lot of people that are looking for animals, seafloor, trying to live down there. So yeah, we have a full operation looking at everything, trying to do most of what we possibly can for these amazing opportunities to go down to the sea.
Yeah, and Alvin has used to Titanic, the wreck of Titanic. It was used in 2010 to study the impact of the Deepwater oil spill on things living on the seafloor of the Gulf of Mexico. Gosh, it's pretty much, whatever a scientist can dream up, and the Alvin team says, we can do that, or we'll try to do that, they'll do.
Excellent. So Alvin's sort of a multi-purpose, cutting-edge research vessel that can go anywhere and study anything you guys want, whether it's life, geology, shipwrecks, oil disasters, the works.
Yeah, I think there was even talk of trying to take it up into the Arctic Ocean at some point and see what lives on the seafloor underneath the ice.
Very cool. For classes too, if you guys are interested in what lives in the seafloor under the ice, Blue Planet 2 did a really great episode all on that, so I highly encourage you guys to check that out. We'll try and take another question. Again, classes, I know it's hard to hear. You don't need to keep telling me. Let's go to Miss Brady's group, and if you guys have any questions, go right ahead.
Question?
Yeah.
Fine. Who has a question? No one has a question? Go ahead, Kevin. Nice and loud, Kevin.
How many people are there that dive with you?
How many people dive with you?
Yeah, how many in Alvin at once?
Yeah, there's one pilot driving the submarine, and then there are two scientists usually in the submarine and then doing observations and the research. So there are 3 of us in the submarine.
Excellent. Just a quick follow-up, because I know this is in a choppy bit. Elizabeth, I hear that you get the chance to go in Alvin for the very first time after sort of 10 years of being excited about this. Could you speak a little more to that, maybe a little closer, just so we can catch that, because it's such an exciting moment to be able to participate in a research venture like that, especially with how rare and special an opportunity it is. Oh, are they gone entirely?
So yeah, I'll be down on I think the 6th live of the 8 we have out here, and so I'm incredibly excited to see the seafloor for the first time and just gain that additional understanding that you can only get with your eyes, and be able to also have the awesome responsibility of getting all of these samples for all the people I'm working with here to understand their research and sort of being part of this unified team that gets to use this awesome vehicle.
Outstanding. Thank you so much. All right, let's check in with Mr. Atkinson's class.
Yeah, come on, Mario.
Yes.
Right here?
Yeah. You got it, man.
What's the deepest you went in Alvin, and what did you see in there? When you went down there.
What's the deepest been?
A little over 3,000 meters.
So about
1,000 feet.
Yeah. So somebody should do the conversion on that. How many miles is 3,000 meters? You might be surprised. Alvin can actually dive 4,500 meters right now, and they're getting ready to do an upgrade because they're constantly improving the sub. And after that upgrade, the sub will be able to go to 6,500 meters.
very cool. So by comparison, out of curiosity, for the classes that might not know, how deep does the ocean get, ever?
How deep is the ocean? It's about 11 kilometers, 6.5 miles deep. That's the deepest part, and that's in the Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench on the other side of the Pacific from where we are.
So just to make sure we get all the elements of that question, Matt, when you were down that deep, when the deepest you ever dove in Alvin, what did you see when you were down there?
What did you see when you were down there at that deep depth?
Oh, well, we saw we were exploring an area for the first time. We saw lots of different kinds of lava flows, but we also saw a lot of pretty cool critters. One of my favorite is the Dumbo octopus, which is this really beautifully colored octopus that flies through the water with these flaps on its upper part of its body that kind of make it look like Dumbo. But we also saw things like deep water corals and sea cucumbers and a variety of other things like that. It's always interesting when you go down, because you really never know kind of what kind of new things that you're going to see. And almost every time we go down, it seems we find something new, because we still have an awful lot to learn about the deep ocean and the life that's down there and the geologic processes that are down there. So it's always very exciting.
Yeah, if you guys get a chance, do an internet search for the Dumbo octopus. They're really incredible looking.
Outstanding. And for the classes, it's commonly said whenever we do deep sea researchers on our program that the moon is far more well known than the depths of the ocean. So every time we do go down, again, whether it's geology, biology, it's really new stuff, and it's amazing. We'll take 2 more questions, and then after that, if we're able to go see Alvin, that would be great. But let's start with Miss Woods' class. I know you guys have had trouble catching things, but if you have a question.
Hi, we do. Eli's going to ask a question.
Great.
What kind of upgrades will Alvin be getting so it can dive deeper?
Good question.
Oh, okay. So Alvin went through one upgrade in from 2011 to 2014, and it got a brand new titanium personnel sphere that was thicker and bigger than the previous one. And a bunch of other upgrades, new flotation foam, new electronics. And the last thing, I think, is something called the variable ballast system. And that's what allows the sub to trim itself front to back so that it's level when it's in the water. And once that gets its upgrade to the higher pressure that you have at 6,500 meters, then it will get certified to go to that depth by the Navy, which owns the sub, and by a group called NAVSEA, which looks out for safety of submarines in the U.S.
Very cool. All right, we'll head back to Mrs. Zadrozny's class if you guys have a question now. Now there's lots of questions. Excellent.
Go ahead. Go. Nice and loud.
Oh. Do you know the pressure under? Do you know how? Oh my gosh! How is it on your ears underwater? Because I know that the pressure is really is a lot.
Yeah.
You know, how does it feel for your ears? And like what's the pressure underwater that deep?
Yeah.
Okay. This is fun. Yeah, how does it feel when you're that deep, like the pressure on your ears and whatnot? So,
well, fortunately for us, that titanium personnel sphere that Ken mentioned, it keeps it kind of nice and normal pressure for us inside of the submarine. So when I dove down to 3,000 meters, that's about 300 atmospheres pressure, or about 4,500 pounds on every square inch of the sub. So the pressure is tremendous, and without that titanium sphere, we certainly wouldn't be able to go down that deep. But we're all nice and safe inside. But it does get a bit cold down there, because the ocean water at the bottom of the ocean is quite cold, and we don't really expend energy on like a heater or anything like that. So it gets a little chilly towards the end of the dive.
yeah, that's an important point. So when the sub leaves the ship, it's under its own power. They have to use their own batteries. So everything like maneuvering or using the manipulators, or even if you could have a heater in the sub, that would take power, and that might shorten the dive and the things that you could do down there. So they try and minimize how much power they use during the 8 hours of a dive.
So more science and less comfort. A quick follow-up on that, actually, two quick follow-ups. One is to ask, so as you're going down, is it the same pressure the whole time, or is it like when you're going up or down in a plane where there's like, do your ears pop at any point of it? Is there any, do you have any effects of pressure change?
Not that I've ever felt before.
Okay.
Fortunately, that titanium sphere really keeps us kind of nice and cozy in terms of the pressure.
I spoke to one of the pilots once, and he said they calculated that the sphere does change size slightly. It gets smaller, so about 5 gallons.
About 5 gallons.
Yeah. So don't try not to think about that when you're down.
Well, so that's the next follow-up question. And you don't need to be graphic, but what would happen to you if you were down there without the titanium sphere? What happens at that sort of pressure?
You would be squashed.
Yeah.
You would be shrunken. So one of the things that we do here for fun and for souvenirs is we'll take styrofoam and we'll leave it on the outside of the sub and we'll bring it down to the bottom of the ocean. And so if you take, say, like a big shake cup or like a wig stand, like a styrofoam head, they get shrunken down all nice and proportionally. So they come up really tiny. So here's a cup that's been shrunken. This started out as a coffee cup, and the drawing and stuff that was done on it was done before it was shrunk, and the pressure shrunk it down all proportionally because the pressure's the same in all directions, and so you just end up with a little tiny mini version. Unfortunately, people aren't as shrinkable as styrofoam, so just come up with a mini version of our own selves. It would be pretty instantaneously.
I think it's something like have been down your scuba diving. Your lungs get smaller and smaller as you go down. By the time your lungs
You guys want?
Oh, cut out a little bit, guys. Excellent. So yeah, that was great, and I love the coffee cup. You can go from coffee to espresso and like just take it down there, and you're set. So guys, unfortunately, it's cutting out a little bit. If you guys can still hear me on the Atlantis, if you're able to take us back, just let me know when you can hear me. Oh, you're good. Wants to work.
Say again?
Yeah, so you guys can hear me. We've done one round of questions. If you're able to take us back, I know some of the classes have to leave in about 10 minutes or so. So if you're able to take us back, that would be great. I'm so glad we got one round of questions in. And you can sign back in when you're back there. Does that work?
I'm just going to walk and let's see what, maybe you can come all the way with me.
Perfect. Okay. Fingers crossed.
And I'm going to plug in the headphones so you can hear me better. So we're going to leave these guys behind.
All right. So bye, Matt, Elizabeth. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Can you hear you great?
Okay. So I am going to be leaving the computer lab. And I'm going to go into the main lab. You can see, main lab. This is where most of the scientists usually work. A lot of them are all over the ship right now. We're getting ready for the first dive tonight. This is where I might lose you for a little bit, out on the side, the starboard deck. All right, so I'm on like I said, the research vessel Atlantis, 270 feet long. We're currently making about 11 knots in the East Pacific. I'm gonna ignore this thing for now because we want to go see Sentry.
Oh, we have lost you. Oh, you're back.
Nope. Yep, I'm back. Okay. So this is the autonomous underwater vehicle Sentry.
And autonomous means that it's independent. So we can program it to do a mission, and we lift it up with the crane back there and put it over the side, and it sinks down to the seafloor, and it does its thing. And now because it's in the water, we can't communicate with it with radio waves. We have to use sound. And sound is a very inefficient communication method. We can basically send text messages back and forth to the vehicle. So every couple of seconds, it will send back a message saying, I'm okay, this is where I am, I'm okay, this is where I am. And then we can see some of its systems, how they're operating. And then if we want to change what it's doing, you know, maybe slightly change its program, they can do that from the surface. And it will do things like map and photograph the seafloor in really high resolution. So the thing that you saw in the lab back there, that map, that was fairly coarse resolution. You can't see a lot of features. When this thing gets close, up to 30 feet away from the seafloor, then you get to really see, you know, fine scale differences in the bottom. It can measure the chemistry and some of the different physical properties of the water, like the temperature and the salinity. And it can also be fitted with different sensors to measure the changes in the magnetic orientation of the crust, which is a really wild way to tell like how old the crust of the seafloor is. And it can even detect tiny changes in the gravitational pull of the Earth down on the seafloor. But a lot more these days, Sentry is being used to go down first ahead of Alvin to map the seafloor in high resolution, so that, and then come back in the morning, and then the folks who are going to be diving look at the maps that Sentry is able to produce, and they can revise their dive plan to go. We're going to go over here instead of over here because this looks more interesting. So that's Sentry. And then right around the corner here, there's Alvin. Alvin is, like Matt said, is a 3-person sub. You can see that shiny sphere there, that's all titanium, and that's a 6-foot diameter sphere that 3 people in for 8 hours. They have 3 portholes here to look out of, and then 2 smaller ones on the sides. Maybe I can get better wireless over here. This basket here, this is where they put all their instruments and their sample collection stuff. And the pilot uses these 2 manipulator arms to pick things up off the seafloor and put it in here, or to pick up some of these instruments and put them on the seafloor. It has cameras. This is a 4K camera, ultra high definition, and then a couple of other cameras up on the top, as well as lights. So I think we're getting almost to the end. I'll leave for us to have Alvin or Sentry. The ship. So the ship itself is a research tool that has sensors all over it.
Thank you, Ken. That's super cool. Kids probably aren't near as excited as Alvin as I am, as I've grown up with it, but that was amazing. We have time for a few quick questions, guys. I know some classes are going to lunch, so we'll start with Mr. Atkinson's group. You guys have a second question.
All right, Ariel.
About the ship. Come on up.
Here he comes.
How long does it normally take to come up so you don't risk any nitrogen bumping?
Well, so that goes back to the question that somebody asked about the pressure change inside the sphere. So because this is a titanium sphere and it's really strong, the pressure inside of Alvin doesn't change. We're at what's called 1 atmosphere pressure. Down at the bottom of the very bottom of the seafloor, it's 10,000 atmospheres. If you were down there, you'd get crushed. But because the pressure doesn't change, when you go down or when you come up, you don't feel any different. So that's the beauty of that's why it's so rugged. This is 3-inch thick titanium. It's probably the most expensive part on the sub.
Excellent. Great question. Great answer. Let's go to Champaign, Illinois. You guys have a second question? Take your time. Don't worry. All good.
Has anything ever went wrong on Alvin?
Yeah, they sometimes they have little things go wrong, but because they're very safety conscious, if even a little thing goes wrong, they want to check it out and make sure it's not a bigger thing. Like, let's see, 2 dives ago, I think they had a short in one of the systems, or what they call a ground. But the pilots are also the people who maintain the sub. And some of them were actually involved in the recent upgrades. So some of them helped build parts of the sub. And before you can become a pilot, you have to know every inch of the sub. You have to become an electrical engineer, a mechanical engineer, hydraulics expert, everything. And so if there's a problem, they know how to troubleshoot it. Because there's never been anything really bad. But if there is ever a problem, there's no way to send down extra parts or anything like that. So they have to figure it out with a little bit of help from the folks up here on the ship, up in what we call the top lab, where we communicate with them.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent, Ken. That actually reminds me, we did an entire month of space in November, and so you mentioned the analogy between an astronaut and someone going down in Alvin. So very similar situation. You need to know every element of it before you can go. We'll take one more question, and then we'll wrap up. I know we're getting close to lunch, so Miss Brady's class, if you guys have a last question for us, go ahead.
You guys ever been caught in a storm while diving?
Ken, did you catch that?
Caught in a storm diving?
I think so. Miss Brady, is that the question?
Morning. Have you guys ever been caught in a storm while diving?
Oh, caught in a storm while diving, Ken.
Okay. Protocols for conditions. So during the dive, they'll go to water, when they want to dive, and then they pack a forecast, like an hour-to-hour forecast. And if they see that the wind and the sea state, the waves, are going to change while the sub is underwater and exceed those guidelines, then they'll bring the sub up earlier. I have seen some recoveries of the submarine in conditions that were right at the edge of what they like, and it's pretty exciting.
So just like you prep when you're in the sub, you prep to make sure there's no situation in which you could damage the sub or the people in it as they're bringing it back on the. Excellent.
But that being said, if a storm came up suddenly, and all of a sudden conditions got bad, they could tell the sub, just stay down. We want to wait, stay down overnight. We want to wait and recover after things calm down. And they have oxygen and food and water enough to sustain them for, let's see, it's 3 days. Well, the length of the dive plus 1/2, so 8 hours plus 4 hours, 12 hours, plus 3 days. And that's a requirement by the Navy.
Excellent.
So they could,
very cool.
But nobody has ever done that. In 54 years, nobody has ever had to do that.
And I hope they never do. Ken, what we do at the end of every hangout, we'll wrap up there. So I'm going to demute the microphones of every class. So boys and girls, if you could join me in just saying a big thank you to Ken for joining us today. So Miss Champagne, Miss Brady's class, Mr. Atkinson's group, so join me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Ken, we look forward to having you back soon.